In January 2024, I boarded a one-way flight from Dallas-Fort Worth to Amsterdam, and I proceeded to spend the next 14 months of my life living in the Netherlands. And when I recently returned, when I made that flight from Amsterdam back to Dallas-Fort Worth, when I went through the US Customs, they asked me one question, and that question was, did you bring anything back with you? And I told them, no, I didn't. But I lied. Okay, I lied. I lied to the US Customs. Now, before you deport me, President Trump or whoever is watching this, let me explain myself. I didn't bring back any physical items from the Netherlands, at least as far as I'm aware. But I did bring back these 4 Dutch habits, and in this video I want to share the 4 Dutch habits that I brought with me from the Netherlands to the US, the first of which being cycling. So as you can see in the background, I rode my bike here to this park. And look, I grew up coming to this park damn near every single day. Okay, almost every day throughout my adolescence I was here at this park, from the age of 16 all the way until I left the US. So that's what, 8 years. 8 years that I was coming to this park. I drove pretty much every single time. And look, I don't want to reveal my location or my parents' location, but I don't live that far away from this park. It's maybe a 5 to 7 minute bike ride at most. At most. And that's before they installed these quote-unquote bike lanes on that path from where my parents live to this park. So it's not a very long ride at all, but I always drove, and I don't really know why I did that. I don't really know why I did that. I guess I was just lazy, but honestly, I mean, having to drive and stop at these red lights and deal with the traffic and other people who can't drive, I feel like that's a lot more mentally taxing than just getting on your bike and enjoying the weather. I mean, if the weather is good enough to come to the park, it's good enough to bike as well. But I have not driven a car to this park since I got back. And actually, I want to say I've only really driven about 5 times. I've been here for 3 weeks. I've only driven maybe 5 or 6 times at most. Whenever I got in the car for the first time, and my parents are letting me use their van, so shout out to them, but basically the tank was at about 3/4 of a full tank. And right now, at least as of yesterday, I drove yesterday, or maybe the day before. Last time I was in the car, it was at about 1/4 of a tank. So I've used about half of a tank of gas, and that van doesn't really get very good gas mileage. So I have not been driving a whole lot at all. At all. With my old driving habits, I'd probably have to fill that van up every single week. But now, at least while I'm here in the DFW area with my girlfriend, we're cycling as much as possible. And look, cycling here isn't the most pleasant experience by any means, but what I've come to realize is that somebody has to do it. If nothing changes, then nothing changes. So somebody has to set that precedent to show that, hey, there is a demand for this. Because you never know who might be watching. Maybe an urban planner in this city might see me on the bike and say, hey, there is a demand for this, and they can implement policy accordingly. Or maybe I'm just being a bit too idealistic. All I know is that personally, I made a commitment to myself that I am going to sustain that cycling habit no matter where I go. And if I can't sustain that cycling habit, or at the very least walking, or just not needing to rely on a car, if I'm in a place where I literally have no other mode of transportation other than driving, I will simply not stay in that place. I simply will not stay in that place. Now again, the DFW area is not only bad for cyclists, but I would go as far as to say that it's pretty hostile. It's pretty hostile because really people here, again, their mentalities are not really aligned with that being a mode of transportation, a viable mode of transportation for adults. But again, I'm hoping that in the time that I'm here, I can at least begin to facilitate some sort of change in people's subconscious minds that that is actually a viable form of transportation. Maybe I'm being idealistic, but what else can I do? Now, the next Dutch habit that I brought back to the US with me after living in the Netherlands for 14 months is speaking Dutch. Now, to be completely honest with you, ik spreek een klein beetje Nederlands. Een klein beetje. En Look, it's kind of embarrassing to say that I was there for 14 months and I was surrounded by it, and I can't even really hold a conversation. And that feeling of embarrassment is kind of fueling me to double down on learning Dutch, ironically, now that I'm not in the Netherlands anymore. And I also feel this pressure to sustain and maintain what I've already learned. Now, this is exceedingly difficult because, of course, people here do not speak Dutch. People here don't speak Dutch. If I go up to somebody and I say, "Spreek je Nederlands," they are not going to know what I'm talking about at all. People here don't speak Dutch. Most people here probably can't even point out the Netherlands on a map. And if they can, all they know about the Netherlands is Amsterdam. Oh, what part of Amsterdam did you go to? Oh, actually, I was in Brabant and Gelderland for a month. Where? They don't know what I'm talking about. They don't know anything about the Netherlands other than, again, Amsterdam. So it's very difficult to practice my conversational skills in Dutch, but luckily I have a girlfriend who is born and raised in the Netherlands and speaks fluent Dutch and English. So every once in a while, at least once a day I would say, I try to sort of say something to her in Dutch and just have a little mini conversation just to build up my conversational skills piece by piece. Obviously, that's not the most efficient way to go about it. I should probably invest in full-on Dutch lessons, and if we do return to the Netherlands, then that is something that I will definitely explore doing. Or maybe I'll try to partner with a company that can provide some sort of Dutch coaching service or something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna figure out a way, but we've also been listening to a lot of Dutch music. Okay, these are some of the songs that I've been listening to. You can see them on the screen right now. If you know any more songs that have this kind of vibe, by the way, please put me on in the comments. If you know any more Dutch songs that have this kind of vibe, then put me on game in the comments, because I would love to add to this playlist. But also, we've been watching Dutch shows. We just got finished watching this show called, I don't even know the Dutch name, but the translation is Roosters. So I don't know, if you're Dutch, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but it is on Netflix, and it was one of the few Dutch shows that actually had English subtitles. That's a big constraint that I ran into with learning Dutch, was that when I went on Netflix or Videoland to watch Dutch shows, very few of them had English subtitles, which again made it very difficult to actually learn Dutch. So what I ended up doing instead was watching English shows with Dutch subtitles. And I think it did help a little bit in terms of my ability to just translate in my head, but I am definitely doing what I can to, at the very least, sustain what I've already built in terms of learning Dutch. And the biggest thing for me in that process is actually speaking it. Now, another language that Dutch people know, and this is something that I think very few people know about, but Dutch people don't just speak Dutch and English, they also speak this hidden language, and that language is known as complaining. Yes, okay, if you're Dutch, before you dislike the video, tell me that I'm lying. Tell me that I'm lying. Dutch people love to complain, and it's for a good reason. You see, it's that complaining that prevents complacency, and that is, in my opinion, a big part of the reason why the Netherlands is so far ahead in terms of quality of life, is because Dutch people don't normalize things that have no business being normalized. For example, car dependency. There was a point when the Netherlands was trending toward car dependency. I want to say in the 50s, 60s, 70s, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But after children started getting killed in vehicular accidents, as pedestrians that is, Dutch people started to complain, and they did this in the form of protests. And because of that, urban planners took the cue, they read the room, and they implemented infrastructure that wasn't necessarily aligned with car dependency. And now in the Netherlands, you can get by without having a car. That is a habit that I have brought back with me. If you haven't been watching my videos recently, I have been complaining nonstop about different aspects of the US. And look, a big part of this is me just utilizing my right to free speech, but it's also for the sake of actually making the country a better place. Because at the end of the day, whether I'm living in Europe, Asia, Africa, or wherever else, America is still my home. It is still my home. This is still where I was born and raised, and I want to see it become better, because I know that it has the potential to become better. But at the same time, nothing's going to change if nothing changes. So somebody has to talk about the issues that are present in America. And while there are plenty of people already doing that, I'm adding my voice into that conversation, because I see some very specific issues that if the US could just solve the urban planning issue, the quality of life would improve literally tenfold. Literally tenfold. So best believe that I am going to keep complaining. I'm going to keep being negative. I'm going to keep being not even cynical, but skeptical. I'm going to keep being skeptical, because if you're skeptical, if a nation, if a society is skeptical, then that will enable that society to have an optimistic outlook on the future. Because once you acknowledge the problems, you can begin to start searching for solutions. And that is what I want to help happen here in the US. Again, maybe I'm being overly idealistic, I don't know. I just know that I can't stand by and just watch this happen and not actually do anything. Now, the next Dutch habit that I brought with me to the US after living in the Netherlands for 14 months is frugality. I have become extremely frugal. You heard me mention earlier in the video that if I were to sustain my old driving habits here in the US while driving this van, I would probably have to fill up every single week. And listen, I'm gonna be honest with you, okay? I make pretty good money from YouTube. I make some pretty good money from YouTube. Obviously it fluctuates, but I make enough to where I don't need to think about gassing up that van every week or every day if it came down to it. It's not really that big of a deal, but I also don't like to just blow my money. Now, part of this is because of my experiences when I was younger. I was making good money from YouTube and I pretty much blew all of it on a nice car, a nice apartment, designer clothes, jewelry, just a lot of dumb, frivolous things. But a lot of it is also because, having lived in the Netherlands, I realized that the correlation between consumerism and quality of life is a lot weaker than Americans like to believe. A lot of people here like to buy things in order to distract themselves from the fact that this country is actually not as good as they think it is. And that's kind of a different discussion for a different day. But the point that I'm making is that I don't need to purchase things in order to feel better about myself and my life anymore. And honestly, I have to give credit where credit is due. Dutch people helped me see the light in that regard. And if I'm being honest, for a good portion of my time in the Netherlands, I still sustained my materialistic ways. I was still thinking in terms of how I can work harder so I can get a nicer car and things of that nature. But over time, especially in my last month in the Netherlands, being in Fassen, being in a very small town where the way of living was much simpler, I realized that happiness doesn't really come from things. It comes from experiences, and for me personally, it comes from peace of mind. Being able to wake up every day and feed the chickens that would walk into the backyard of the Airbnb. That was something that I could look forward to every single day. And I'm starting to realize as I mature that that is what I need to center my life around. I need to make that my main focal point, just having those experiences, those interactions. And of course, this aligns with the Dutch way of thinking, and really, by and large, the European way of thinking, which is that consumerism and materialism are not the end-all be-all. Now, to be fair, to be completely fair and transparent with you, again, I just mentioned that I'm making pretty good money with YouTube right now, and that's not by coincidence. It's because I'm out here posting almost every single day. And I'm saying this to say that I do still sort of have the American mentality of making money. So I do want to make money, but I also want to keep money. So I feel like that's a really good combination to have, where you're seeking out more money and it's not coming at the expense of your ethical or moral boundaries. You're just making money doing something that you would probably do for free. Me talking to you is just like me talking to a friend. I'm having these same conversations for free pretty much every time I see people. But also being able to keep the money that I'm making so that I can further invest in more experiences that can help me elevate myself and broaden my horizons so that I can have even more meaningful and much deeper conversations with you about these sorts of things.